Are you an aspiring pilot and curious about the long and potentially expensive journey ahead of you? Or maybe you're a traveller who's concerned about safety and the proper training of pilots? Well, today's video will take a look at the number of hours needed to become an airline pilot. It varies depending on the country and its respective aviation authority, but we'll examine 3 of the biggest global aviation markets and the hours requirements for their professional pilots. Let's get started. Flight time largely determines the path to the airlines. Most countries and aviation authorities have similar requirements for the mandatory hours to earn a commercial or airline transport certificate. But what are the specifics? Well, let's first start off with China. Chinese regulations more closely reflect European standards than those of the FAA in the United States. Pilots must be appropriately rated by the Civil Aviation Administration of China, or CAAC, to fly commercially in China. According to Smithsonian Magazine, most airline-oriented training programs span about 250 hours for initial training. This training covers basic flying, instrument skills, and multi-engine flying. After this, students go through preparatory courses geared towards learning the systems on the plane they anticipate flying, whether it be the Airbus A320, Boeing 737, or perhaps the Comac C919. 10 hours are spent in the simulator, and even more time is spent in the classroom. Chinese students also go through a short turbine transition, usually flown in a turboprop, such as a Beechcraft King Air. After earning their high-performance rating, Chinese pilots go to the full-motion simulators to work on their airline transport certification. This training spans up to 18 simulator sessions, totaling about 70 hours of experience in the plane. Most full-motion 6-axis simulators have high enough fidelity to the feeling of flying a real aircraft that these hours can be logged as flight time. After simulator time, a pilot going through CAAC training has about 260 hours in planes and 70 in simulators. The last step of the process for Chinese airline candidates is to observe flights from the flight deck jump seat. Most Chinese airlines require new pilots to observe around 250 hours of airline operations on their type of aircraft before they can fly paying passengers. And now, let's head over to Europe. The European Union's rules rely on the guidance of their regulator, EASA, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency. The minimum hours for earning a commercial pilot certificate under EASA regulations vary depending on whether a pilot follows a modular course or trains in an integrated flight and ground school program. Generally, an EASA commercial certificate takes about 200 hours of flight training. Similar to the Chinese requirements, EASA students first learn to fly in single-engine planes for their private pilot equivalent. Many then transition directly to commercial multi-engine certificates before completing their instrument rating. Regardless of the training profile followed, EASA is well known for having a demanding litany of theoretical tests. Any new airline pilot, or those seeking a license conversion from another authority, must pass 14 ground school tests and the ground training modules. And finally, let's head over to the United States and go into a little more detail, not just because most of our audience watches from the country, but also because the author of this piece is a commercial airline pilot for a US airline. The global standard for brand new airline pilots' flight hours sits around 200 to 250. However, one of the starkest outliers to this figure is the United States. Since the specific piece of legislation was passed by US Congress in 2012, most US pilots need 1,500 flight hours before they are eligible for an ATP, or Airline Transport Pilot Certificate, to work at the airline level. Pilots who learn to fly in the US operate under the guidelines of the Federal Aviation Regulations and are regulated by the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA. The most common pathway for US pilots is to earn their private, instrument, commercial, and flight instructor certificates in that order. Like the rest of the world, the civilian non-academy regulations require 250 hours as the minimum threshold for a commercial certificate. The bridge between the commercial certificate and ATP changed in 2012. Many pilots who want to gain the 1,250 hours between the commercial and ATP certificates pursue the instructor pathway. Instructing allows pilots to earn between 40 and 100 hours per month, depending on the type of instruction. Other standard time-building methods are aerial surveillance or photography missions, cargo flying, charter flying, pipeline patrol, or banner towing. But generally, instructing is the fastest way to build time, even if it can be relatively demanding compared to the other options listed. Alternatively, prospective pilots who want to become pilots at a younger age can enroll in post-secondary degree programs that reduce the hour requirements for an airline transport certificate. Some degree programs shrink the hour threshold to 1,250 total time, while others bring it down to 1,000. The type of program and credit hours spent in class determine how significant the deduction is. Military pilots are also eligible for a reduced-hour ATP certificate. At 750 hours, pilots who have served in the Army National Guard, Air National Guard, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard or Navy are eligible. Interestingly, some pilots qualify for airlines in the US with a mere 250 hours of fixed-wing aircraft time, 100 hours of which must be spent as the pilot in command. This stipulation is used primarily by helicopter pilots who require a minimum of 500 hours in helicopters and another 250 in airplanes. On its face, it might seem that military pilots receive a heavy discount on required ATP hours. However, the time spent preparing for flight on the ground with engines running does not count towards total flight time as in the civilian world. As an example, a Black Hawk pilot can only log 0.7 hours for a 1-hour engine operation if they spend 18 minutes on the ground performing pre-flight checklists, which is standard. Civilian flight rules allow pilots to log every minute from when the engine starts until it's turned off. Thus, the military time discount has a way of equaling out. Ultimately, 250 hours is generally the global standard for commercial pilot certificates. Even in the US, the 250-hour requirement is reflected in the civilian commercial hours mandate and the military fixed-wing minimum. Many airlines have hired pilots at these hour minimums over the last few years as the industry recovered from COVID-19. However, the most recent hiring has trended toward more experienced pilots, as most pilot vacancies have been filled, at least at the time of making this video. Additionally, with regards to the time of this video's production, some airlines cannot hire as many pilots as initially planned due to Boeing's ongoing delivery issues. Without a doubt, there will be more unforeseen factors influencing air travel patterns far into the future as well. But regardless of the hiring landscape, many of the world's pilots train in the US aviation infrastructure because of the number of instructors available to build their 1,500-hour ATP flight time. This trend has been the same for many years and seems likely to continue so long as the US ATP certificate requires 1,500 hours. What do you think of the flight hour requirements to become an airline pilot? Do you think it's excessive in the United States, or should other countries raise their standards as well? Let us know what you think by leaving a comment. Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.